Hello, everyone. This is now the fourth live stream we've had for our studio launch event, and I'm still vibing to all these intro music videos and countdowns. And I'm really excited that my colleagues made these, and they're so talented. So awesome stuff. Sudipto, the person who made these. So today, we are going to talk about our asset management system that was revamped, and so we actually released this slightly before our new studio, but it works really well with it. And so in today's stream, we'll go over what it's all about, how it works, and then we're actually going to be coding a little bit. We're going to go deep into it. But before all that, um, we did a few things last week that I just want to quickly highlight so you all remember, because we did the first day was, let me think, to say this the right way, of course. So we did a keynote where we had our CEO Michael and CPO Mario talk about the future of how Hygraph sees, content management. How are we all composable? What are the things we're going to have to do? And we've built the Hygraph Studio, the new one, to support all that stuff. So that was a super cool session. And then after that, we had a kind of a few presentations about the developer stuff, like the developer experience. And then after that, we talked about the editor experience. So now that we have that lovely complete circle, it's now time to look at like a bit more of the side bits now. So today we're doing the asset management system, but then tomorrow, I'll talk about a bit later at the end of this stream. And we're going to be talking about all the performance gains that we made in the app with the developers that actually made the app. So that will be like super deep into it. All right. So that is all out of the way. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. I will answer them as I go because I'll be coding some stuff. So I'm hoping you are either guiding me or telling me, hey, what the heck are you doing? That would be super fun. And also, I'm coming to you from a super rainy, cold France. Last time I said this, it was like 25 degrees, or I don't know how many freedom units that is in the US, but it was hot. Super nice. Not today, though. So put in the chat where you're coming from, where are you watching from, and what's the weather, please. All right. So today, I will have the most premium support person on call for this system. Because if I don't know something or you have a question that I don't know how to answer, we have Fabian on the line here. I won't put him on the screen just yet, but he knows everything about the asset system because he was in charge as the product lead to figure everything out, release it, all the process. So if there's a question, I'll put him on the screen because he will know. All right, let's start with some slides, right? All righty then. So let's talk about our asset management, and it's especially because it is revamped, so we have a lot more control, more reliability, lots more performance, because we've seen our customers use so much of this asset management system, and it's growing so much. We need to be ready for the future, and that's why we worked on this. And so, if you can see, let's look at a few nerdy graphs here. And so, I'm just looking down at my screen so I can read them to you. So the asset transformations, because that's what happens a lot when you do images. You don't show the original on the screen because it tends to be a lot of time of loading, but sometimes you might want to crop, things like that. We have improved almost 50% in performance on that. And of course, you should know we don't always do the transformations. It's once and then it's set in the cache. But if you have a ton of images and they're not in the cache just yet on the CDN, we'll have to do the transformation and show you. And so that's like a lot faster now. And so then the other one that's a little bit more geared toward us for our future of how we scale everything up, we tend to have a lot of project clones, starter kits that have a bunch of assets in them already, right? And so I don't even know what the numbers are, but it's all like Fabian might be able to say in the chat, but I feel like we're like 10 times faster now when we clone bigger projects, or if you want to have multiple variations of your project and you want to copy over all the assets, that's super fast now. All right. And so there's also some things where we now have a more native way of uploading assets using actually a GraphQL mutation. So that fits very nicely in our ecosystem. And so there's also now, because I'm not sure how far I can go with this, but we have signed URLs. And so you can kind of upload that way. And it's working like just a lot nicer now. Basically, all of those things are quality of life and performance. And so as an end user, it should all kind of just feel the same for now. But now we have this base to do all the new things that we've always wanted to do with this system. And so there's a few improvements, of course, because if you can, you sneak them in, right? That's where Fabian is, in charge of product. So before, our URLs were basically just our base URL and then an ID. And that worked fine. But you sometimes see that when you're doing optimizations for SEO, you might want to have that file name specifically of what you called that file on your computer, that's like reads well, because then when Google indexes it, it knows what it's um, indexing and showing. And so you can now actually have that whole URL with all your transformations on it, and then also append actually the file name of your file. So that was a pretty often requested feature that we now have. And so let's have a look at the transformations, because I keep saying this word, like, what is a transformation, right? And so what we've built is that on multiple different ways, I'll show you in a sec what these are, you can actually transform an image to then render it in a certain context, because the way you want to be serving images for your end users is in the context of their device and where in the design something is shown. And so you're not going to, if you upload, let's say, a super large PNG file, and you're going to show it on a tiny screen like this, you're not going to load that super large PNG file. But what you might do is actually make it a WebP format, because it's a much smaller file format that's highly compressed but still looks good. And then you want to maybe crop it to a square so it fits the screen a little bit better. And that's in the context of the user, because when then the next user looks at the same thing on a desktop, you might want to crop it differently or make it a bit bigger or set a different size so it works on higher pixel density screens. Anyway, all of that stuff you can now do with Hygraph, and there's a few really nice things added. Like, and we've had some of those before, but other ones are just, they work a bit better now. Like, we have the auto image property that looks at your browser, and your browser tells the server, this is the type of image format that I serve best, WebP, AVIF that you see here, or things like that. And we actually now look at your browser string and then just serve you the right image format if you want that. And that is generally what you see when you do a performance optimization run on your website. You'll see Google Lighthouse tell you, oh, but these images should be in another format and they're much better. With Hygraph, you get that out of the box. It will just do that, and that's like a killer feature, especially for me. I'm an image nerd. I want all these things. All right. We can also do things like quality settings, cropping, compressing, borders, a whole bunch of things. And in our demo in a sec, I will show you all these things. So, are you ready to build something? And so in our chat, I have a question for you. So I've built a demo site, and let me show you that now, which is basically a little stock image library starter kit that's super simple, but has a bunch of images from Hygraph, of course. And so I've built this in Next.js and in Nuxt.js, talking to the same Hygraph instance. And so I could kind of just go over how I've built it, go into all the details and show you some stuff. Or we can just go with a clean slate and I will actually code the thing on the screen while I'm presenting this thing. So in the chat, do you want to give me an insane challenge or a normal challenge? I'm happy with both. So while you decide, let me just quickly go back to my slides, because let's just talk a little bit about yeah, Sarah, this is basically my favorite meme for demos. Is I will burn no matter what, but it's on, this is just the way it goes. So I think if I'm looking at Andreas, we might go with the insane. Let's have a look. So what we would build if we build is it's a stock media library. So, these websites like pexels.com and 500px.com, they have these amazing images you can use for free. And so I grabbed a few of those images, put them in Hygraph, and now we're using the system and then showing you these, them on the screen. And so what I've done is I've grabbed the assets, how do you call this? Like the asset schema that we have in Hygraph out of the box, and I enriched it with a few fields. Because now I actually have this whole website that you're seeing here without having to add any new schema in Hygraph. All these images just come out natively from Hygraph. And when I go to the page, you'll actually see that's the ID of that asset in Hygraph. And then I'm showing all the extra things that came with that I've added to the asset schema on its own. So it's a super clean, like there is no schema here. I've only taken the asset one and I added a little alt field so I can make a little title about what is in this image. And so that just shows you a super nice way to see how you can use a headless system without even touching it too much, right? We only have the assets here, right? So let's go back to my slides for a sec. And so we'll of course have the goal for me to show you here is all the different ways you can show an image, right? So we're showing a grid with squares, we see the original ratio, and then we have a download one that's like the original file. Let's see. So if you are insane like me and want to code along, you can actually grab these links, and I'm hoping, oh yeah, NG here is actually putting them in the chat for you. So if you are a developer and you're keen on this, what you can do is if you put the third link in there, NG, please. Yes, this one. So that link here, if you click this, you will actually clone the Hygraph project that you see on the screen here. So you get all the information of the Hygraph project, you get all the images already, and it's all set up for you to go, and it makes you an account so you have everything. And then with that, if you like Nuxt or Next, you can just grab one of those and then you can code along. And there's a demo URL of the Nuxt version that I just deployed. So you can have a look at how it's supposed to look. Then the only thing we have to do is kind of install the stuff. And this .env file, this is actually the variables that you could use. Like, I'm not sure how technical we should go now, but we'll just go for it. Environment variables, and that's where we put in the URL on how to connect to Hygraph. And then you can go to localhost. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to just share my screen. And right now, this one is the Next.js app that's running. I'm just going to kill that. And we're going to start from scratch. But I'll keep this on the screen because if I screw up, then at least it works. And so in the chat here, we chose insane or normal. We're going insane. Nice. But I am really good at Nuxt.js, and I can probably just with my eyes closed code it. Next.js, I'm slightly less good. I can still do it. I've done the two demos relatively fast because with Hygraph, you can do it fast. Which of the two should I do? If it's up to me, I'm going to go with Nuxt.js because for me, it's easier. So if nobody puts it in chat, I'm just going to do Nuxt. So what I'll do, I will open this one. Oh, I'm just going to put it on the other screen so it doesn't bother you guys. But I have like at least I have like, if I wanted to cheat a little bit, I could. And so this one we don't need. Let's make another one. Oh, let's see. How do we do this? You know what? We'll start like from actual scratch. Oh, add block plus updated itself. Sure. Why not now? All right. So we'll go to nuxt.new and literally start from like nothing. And so we're not going to call it my app, but we call it, let's call it Hygraph Livestream. Sure. So now we're relying on my internet to install this fast. Let's say. There we go, npm. I cannot believe I'm going from scratch here, but this is fine. So we have until 7 my time. So that's like 40 minutes. We can do this. We can. Right, we're installing the dependencies of our meta framework. Anyways, this is the moment for elevator music, I guess. I think Angie has that. Yes. It's incredible. Why would it be so slow now? Okay, while we wait for this to install, let's have a look at just this little demo so we can see what I'm supposed to make, right? So there's a grid with all the images. They're all cropped, right? And they show the resolution, they say the alt tag and who uploaded them. Then we go to an image that is the original ratio with the file name here. And then it has also a bunch, like it has the file size, it has the MIME type, stuff like that. Then I can hit download original, and here's my original. So that's what we're building. So let's see how far are we along. Okay, we're good. Well, we don't need a Git repository. Okay. All right. Let's see what we're dealing with. Let's have a look how this looks now. Angie, you can turn off the music if you want. Thanks. Okay, so this is basically how you get started, and we have nothing. So what we need to do is, in this project, I've used Tailwind CSS, which is a CSS framework. So let's grab that. So let's go to Nuxt Tailwind CSS and just install it. So you're seeing this like from actual scratch, right? So you're going to see how fast we can do this and actually build something that works. So we need Tailwind CSS, but we also need the Nuxt GraphQL client. Yes, this one. Oh. And we're waiting again, but we're good. All right, so once we have these, there's a few things we need to do. So these are in Nuxt, they're called modules. So we're going to have to add those. So, and then we also, of course, need to add the Tailwind one. And then it should magically start working. And so to be able to connect to the GraphQL client, we need a .env file. And what we put in there is, let's say, oh, that's the wrong one. And yeah, this is what I need. GraphQL host. And now we need to go into Hygraph to actually grab the information to be able to talk to Hygraph. So we can go to our settings here. And so what's very important is that here you have set up your content permissions. I have already, so I don't have to click this. So what we go for the endpoint, and what we of course want is the high performant read-only endpoint. That's what we want. So we add this in. So now this module will understand that this host exists. This is the cool thing about Nuxt.js. They have modules that do things for you. There's a black magic. You don't have to know. And that's, if it works, it's incredible. If it doesn't work, it's a bit harder, but usually it works. And so what this thing allows you to do is actually make a new folder called queries. And inside there, I can actually go for, let me just get a query for all assets, and we call it the GraphQL file. And it will look at this file and then do the query for me. It does the introspection for me. It gives me TypeScript. It creates me helper functions. It's really, really handy. So for our homepage, we need to get all the assets, right? So what we should do, well, let's just try. Let's clean everything. And so I want all the assets. Wait, maybe I'm zoomed in. Oh no, that's actually how it looks. Okay. Fabian, we might want to have a look at this. Anyways, so what do we need? The alt tag. We need created by, because I want to actually show me, right? Created by Tim Benniks. Okay, so you know what? For speed state, Let me just grab that query from my other project so you can see what we're dealing with. So here, I query all the assets, ID, handle, file name, and then there's some magic that we're going to talk about in a second. When it was published, with height, MIME type, all the things. And so per page is how many I want. So let's do 30 and hit it. Zoom out just a tiny bit. I'm not sure. Look, we're getting a private chat. Let me have a look. Okay, we're good. So I can zoom this in a little. So what this does, it gives me an array of all my assets, ID, handle, file name, and all the other things. And so there's a little bit of magic in GraphQL and Hygraph that I love in this thing. And so you can just grab a URL of an image like this, right? And my URL would be this one. That's this image. But what I actually want is to also show this image on the grid as a square tiny image, not just the big one. So I just give this another name called grid, and then it goes in URL, but there's a little function here. And so I'm starting to do a transformation on that image, and you can see that here. In our docs, we have all the transformations set up, right? All the different things here, all the different outputs, all the things you want. So we can actually put the docs here on the screen. So if you go here to the studio-docs at hygraph.com, you can actually find all this stuff. Let me just remove that again. So what I now do is, okay, I want a transformation on this image. And it's an image, so I'm saying, hey, transform the image, and then resize it to a width and height of 300 and crop it. And this will by default crop it in the center. So this image was tall, right? So it's just cropping things off now. And so I also want to compress the metadata out of it, because images have a lot of metadata in them, makes them heavy to load. But on the web, we don't need that. So you can remove that. And also I want the quality to be just 90%. Just because I can, and I wanted to show this to you, and the image gets less heavy, so easier to download. And then of the document itself, you can then also output to it the auto image output. And you can, this is so cool from this system here. I just clicked auto image, right? And here you have all the different ones that can come out. So I can also just make it a TIFF, but I won't do that for the web. That's not great, but that's actually super interesting that you can do that. And I can also click on crop here, and then you see clip, crop, scale, max. So our docs are also embedded in GraphQL, which make this is just magical. If you have not used that before, this is a game changer for me. Okay, so we have the query. I'm just going to copy it into my code now. So we have a query for all the assets. Okay, this is a good start. And so what we need is actually a page. And so to not show all this stuff, we actually have to do next page. So this is now a page router based on a file. And so this is now our page. And so let's do a template. Oh, and say, hi, stream. Let's have a look at what this looks like. Let's refresh. Oh, no. We have to run it, of course. All right, so it's running now. Okay, now it says hi stream all the way in the back. But some magic happened here, and you haven't seen that yet. Because I ran npm run dev, it actually did a whole bunch of things like figuring things out about our GraphQL. And so let's have a look if that worked. So Nuxt has a .nuxt folder where it puts all its like runtime things in it. And it also made a GraphQL folder now. And so when I open this, it gave me a function called GraphQL Assets, and it created TypeScript and a helper function for me to query this query. So I don't have to do that myself anymore. It's just there. So if I wanted to get all the assets in, I could set up a script. And we're going to do TypeScript here. And then in here, I want assets. Let me see how I write it. GQL assets. And I want per page going to be 30. So somehow it doesn't like this, but what I think I have to do is just reset my code editor because it doesn't know about the TypeScript that was generated yet. Let me just refresh that. There we go. Now it likes it. All right. So let's refresh. Oh, there it is. So all my assets are here. And I haven't actually done anything super complicated here. It just made me a GraphQL assets function based on the fact that this is called assets and it understood everything. And it also gives me TypeScript. So when I hover this, it's actually an asset query. And I know exactly what I can do with that. And so we're getting quite close to our first bits that we're going to have to put on the homepage here. So let me just go to my other project, because what do we need? You know what? For time's sake, I'm going to copy this and then show you what I did. So in the template, we need, well, let's start with the basics, right? We have a header and we have a paragraph. So our stock library starter. However, it does look different than the other one. So what I need to do is, let me just copy this here. So this is basically for now the thing that surrounds everything. So we're just putting it in the center here. All right, here we go. All right, so now what we need to do, we have all these assets. So let's loop over them and just make the list. Well, let's see how I did that in the other one. Oh yeah, I'm going to put this in also so we can see where you can download everything. And then here, I actually, for each of these assets, I'm going to be making a component because they're all the same. So we don't have to, repeat ourselves too much. So let's make a card component. And so that card component gets one of the assets. So we're looping over all the assets. So it's getting one of them. So let's see, how did I do that here? I'm just gonna, for speed's sake, I'm just gonna copy paste that because it's not that complicated what we see here. So we define the property asset, which is the asset we're giving it. So we're looping over the whole list, and for each of the things we loop over, we render another card, giving it, this is the thing you have to render. And inside that asset, you have the ID, the file name, all the things that you can see in our query, the ID, file name, the grid URL, the height, the width, all that is actually here. So we're making a link to a page that we haven't built yet. So /assets/ID. And then we have an image that we lazy load, because why not? It's a list of images. If it's very long, you don't want to load all of them until you scroll down, right? And we're just going to grab that grid URL thing, which is this one here. So this is the one from 300 by 300 cropped, stripped metadata, all the things. And then we're going to add the file name behind it. And that's what we saw in the presentation earlier, where this is like an SEO file name now. And then there's an alt tag that I added here. That looks like a 500, but we'll fix it. So when we go to the asset schema, I added this alt tag here. So when we actually look at the assets and I go to this image, Sun badge on beach. That's probably AI generated from where I copied it, but that's all good. And so that alt tag, we can then also use as the title, and we get the width and the height, and we get the created by name. And created by is me. Because if we look at that here, this is published by Tim. So when we have this list, you can also see updated by, and we can also add, where is created by? Here we go. And that's me. And so this is part of the new studio that looks so freaking good. Like we can, this by default, I would always just set it to this. Oh, and now we have it out of the box. So that's super nice. So Tristan, let me see. What did you put there? Tristan, that's just what I used. Hygraph doesn't need anything. There's not even an SDK. So any language you want, you can query Hygraph if you know GraphQL. So you can add anything. Honestly, if you work in PHP, you can still query Hygraph. If you work in Go, anything you want, it's a headless system, right? So we have zero opinion on what you use. That's the cool thing about all this. I like Vue.js, so I'm using Vue.js. If you like Angular, use Angular. All right, where were we? So this renders this whole image essentially, and I'm using a figure HTML tag with a figure caption for the caption below it. So we should have something on the homepage now, but I did see a 500 error. So let's have a look at why that is the case. It really is giving me, okay, so reading name, it cannot read name. Where are we using name? Aha, created by. Interesting. Let's for now not grab this and see if it now works. It's not exactly happy. Line 36 in cart.tsx. 36. Where? Emily, you're showing the next project. Yeah, it's very similar in the next project, to be fair. I feel like the data is not coming through. Otherwise, this everything would have been showing here. Okay, so let's have a look at what's going on. Let's just comment this out. And let's have a look at what assets actually looks like. Okay, assets. Maybe that's a thing. Oh, I know. It's always the simplest things. And now we fixed it. Well, let me not speak too soon. Yes. That wasn't too hard. It's always this thing that breaks. And then you dive on that thing that breaks, and it's never the thing that makes it break. It's always up in the chain. Simplify things. And so thank you, Emily, for finding that quickly. It was just me not setting the data correctly. So we now see all these images, right? And if we have a look at how these are rendered, let's see if I can zoom that in. You can see that there are a bunch of things that happened with width and height of the 300, right? And let's open this image specifically. And when we look in the URL, it's hard for me to zoom that in. Can I do this? Yeah. So we see resize, fit is crop. We have a height of 300, a width of 300, and we're compressing, and the quality is 90, and we have auto image. So all these things are added through a GraphQL query now, and this came out. And so if I wanted to, I could just remove this, of course, and then we get the original back. This is the original. So if you are clever enough and you don't want to use GraphQL to just query all the things, you can also just do this by hand and make this one 500 by 300. And there we go. And if we want to make it wider than higher, it will just crop it differently. And so props, by the way, to Fabian. This is now super, super fast since we released it. It was a little challenging before, and it's really good now. So I can do quality 100, but I can also say, well, give me a quality of 10. You see, it's super pixelated now. And so you can use the URL to do these things, or you can actually just do it in our query like this. All right, so we have our list. When we now click on one of these items, well, it goes nowhere for now, but it actually goes to asset and then the ID of the asset. And so the ID of the asset is this one. You see this fancy thing here? Of course, I could have taken the file name if you wanted to, but for now, I just took the ID. And so what we now need to build is when I click this, that there's a page that queries also just the one asset, which is a dynamic page, right? So let's start with that. So, oh wait, inside the page, we want to have something like this. Oh, that's not correct. Asset. This is what we want. And so if you're familiar with Next 13 and up file routing with these brackets, that's a variable that you get, right? Next has a very similar thing where it's just ID, and that ID is actually a variable that you're getting into your code so you can, grab that from the URL parameter and do something. And so let's see, what do we need for this? Well, let's first do a script. And then we do a template. And of course, if you're into Next.js, this whole script template thing doesn't exist. But when you look at all the other frameworks, like for example, well, not all, but if you look at like Astro or SvelteKit, they have this setup as well, where it's basically just syntax sugar. And in the end, it comes out very similar to React. Anyway, so let's see what we need. So there's a few things here that we want to do, right? So let's have a look at the example. So we want to go back to the index. That's just a simple link. We need the alt tag and a whole bunch of stuff. then who did it, then the original download button, and the asset. So let's start with creating the query on its own. So we don't need all the assets, we just need one asset now. So we do one asset where the ID is a thing, and we have that in our URL, right? And then we need a bunch of other stuff. I'm just, for speed's sake, I'm just going to copy that to show you what we have here. I'm going to use the tips that Fabian gave me to make this a bit smaller. And so let's just grab this ID. And so you can see we want an asset where the ID is an ID. Oops. That's a string. So we want this ID. And then what we need to get is the handle. Actually, I don't think I use it, but no, we can remove it. So we need a file name, the original. And then, so the original here, this is a super nice feature of GraphQL, where normally you would just get the URL, right? But I want to have it, give it different names. And so you can just do it like that. So the original URL is this one, but the hero URL is different. You see, there is like the quality is auto. We're using an automatic selection for what the image is. We're compressing it, and we're making it maximum width of 1280 on the screen, which is this width. And so but it doesn't crop or scale. Well, it scales a little if it has to, because it does one width. The height is automated. And so then we need all the rest, right? So let's just grab this, put it in our code. We're going to do asset.gql, hit this. And if I hit save now, this should have automatically realized that this existed, and it doesn't look like it did what I wanted it to do. So let me just restart and see if that worked. Oh, actually it did. Look, GraphQL client generation completed. So I added a new query, and actually here in my Next folder now, it actually added GraphQL asset with parameters and everything. And so now that I have the asset, we can actually then query that here. So let's do that. But there's a few extra things we need to do, because we need from that URL get the ID to be able to query that asset, right? And so to do that, you can just grab a hook called use route. And that gives you the route. And from that, we have the ID. So we grab the ID, because this file name is also ID, right? So the parameter ID is basically whatever is, we go to the demo. This is that ID that we're getting. Okay, so we have the route, we have the ID, and what we then need to do is just, the asset, and we grab a GraphQL asset for that ID. This is complaining because it doesn't know about the new TypeScript. So I'm just restarting now. There must be another way to restart the TypeScript server in here, but here we go. Now I actually have everything. So there's the asset. So let's have a look what that looks like in JSON. Look, so we now have an asset page that grabs this ID, uses the query we just made, and it all comes back on the screen. And now, of course, it needs to look like a real page. So let's have a look at what we could do, because there's a few other fancy bits that we need. Like I want to actually display the size of this, like the weight, in like megabytes and stuff. So there's a package we have to install for that later. But also I want to show the date in a nice way. So first, let me just grab all this. Well, that's a lot of HTML to show. Wait. Let's first start with simple things like this backlink. And next link is the same as the next link component. It just understands internally how to route things. So back to indexes here. So then let's just start with our title. So I'm getting this asset now in GraphQL. And so the alt tag, I'm just going to call the title. So sunset on the beach, sunbeds on the beach. And so what I want to do is below that, put a bunch of metadata. Let's remove the date string and the size for now because we haven't actually created those in a nice way just yet. So right now we're just grabbing the width and the height and what is the MIME type, so the type of image. So this is a JPEG in this case. All right. So what else? We now actually, what I want to show is the person that created the image. And I'm just going to copy paste that because why? It's just for speed's sake, because you don't want to see me fail typing. So what I'm grabbing here is we have a div that we justify between. So we have two elements flexing to both sides. The first one is actually the image of the picture of the user who created the thing, which is, if we actually go to the assets, oh, I need to see this again, assets, which is this little image here, or this one. So that's what we're grabbing by doing created by picture. And so we're checking if there's an image, then render it and lazy load it. And then we can just write the name of the person who created it. And then here is the link to the original image. So this is like the full weight image because you tend to upload your most raw full weight image to the CMS. And then you use transformations to show it on your channels, websites, apps, whatever. And so if you make a website like this, you want people to be allowed to actually download the original. And so as you can see, there's a dot original. There's an original property. So when we look at the asset, we look at original, it just grabs the URL, no transformations, nothing. This is how you uploaded it. If you uploaded a TIFF file or a PDF or anything, that's what you would get here. Yeah, so those two. Let's have a look what this looks like. Yeah, so right, so we have the resolution, what type of image it is by me, and when I hit download, it opens a new tab, and then you see this is the huge image, and then the URL has no transformations in it whatsoever. All right, so now it's time to actually show the image itself. So I'll just copy paste again. So here, if the asset actually exists, just to be safe, we need to all practice a bit of defensive coding once in a while. In this case, maybe it makes no sense because I use it everywhere. So honestly, I could just remove this. But then it will complain because of TypeScript. Because how we set this up in our schema is that the asset can actually be undefined. So then we would have to change it in the schema for TypeScript to work. So for now, I'll keep it so it doesn't actually complain. So for the source, I've called this version of the URL the hero, which is here. So this is how we transform this one. Then we have the alt tag, which is the same as the title. Then we have the width and the height. And if I don't have it, as you can see, I'm adding some default properties here. And this one is loading eagerly, which means when it loads the HTML and it sees an eager tag, it will load that image first. This is a big image, so you want to load this first and not wait too much because your core web vitals will not be super good in that case. If you lazy load things, they come in later, which is for most of the time that's great. But if for something that has to show immediately, you better put that in so your core web vitals of when something shows on the page is faster. Don't do it with too much because if it's too big, then other things get slower. It's a balance. And then there's the caption, which is just a file name. And I made it absolute here, so it's overlays a little bit. Let's save this and have a look. So there's our image, with rounded corners. It's all kind of fancy. Now, when we go back, there you go. And we can download them. And of course, this is like a super simple variation of whatever this stock library would be, right? But we're almost there. We are at 47. So I have 13 more minutes. Yeah, we can do this. Let me see what Jonas was saying. Protects you because you... yeah, exactly. So defensive coding, it's a thing. Alrighty then. So we have this. So now the one thing I still want to do is actually say what the size is and also the upload date. So what we need for that is, let me just grab that first. So there is this really, really nice package called Pretty Bytes. And I'm just going to install that now because we don't have it yet. And NPM is just pure magic because it gives you all the things you need. Okay, so we now have pretty bytes. And so what we can do, and this is a few thing, because this makes it reactive, we can make a size that is a computed value. So it's using pretty bytes to just get the normal size. And so if we look at the size on its own without the fancy stuff, without the pretty bytes, it gives you just a big number, right? This is the amount of bytes in this image. But we want to make something like, hey, if it's megabytes or kilobytes or things like that, we want to put that in there. It's much nicer. So rather than size like that, we will actually compute the original value into something new. And that's what you do with view. And this is now, if this original value changes somehow due to some reactivity in the app somewhere, this is recomputed and updated directly. And for the nerds amongst us, actually, Vue.js uses kind of the same approach to signals under the hood. So it's not the reactivity approach, but it's closer to signals like solid and stuff. That's all I say about it because that could lead to 5-hour discussions. That's not for today. So now we use pretty bytes to return whatever that computed property is, and then it looks like 1.5 megabytes. That's a lot nicer, right? And we say like this one. All right, so what else do I want? I want the date to be formatted nice as well. So let's just do this. And here I want a date. I don't actually know what the date would be, but because we use this lovely GraphQL module, it gave me TypeScript. So I can actually literally just find what that date is. So that's also not exactly nicely readable, right? So let's make another computed one. That is just also another copy paste. It's just easier. Which is a date string with computed that published at one, but it makes it to a US locale date string and just make it a full style. So this is like internal JavaScript or Node.js. So rather than published at, we'll go with date string. And now it looks like a real thing. And I think I just spent a lot of time talking and not so much coding, but we have like a proper project here. Of course, what I haven't done is doing OG tags, meta descriptions, things like that. But that's just busy work. That's not complicated at all. Like we have all the information in Hygraph. We can just add a few things like use SEO meta. Let's see, what do we want? Do we want the title? Yes. And that would be our asset.alt. I'm not sure if it's understanding it here yet because it's querying it here. I'm not sure this is going to work. Let's see. Oh, there it is, sunbeds on the beach. So all of this after this is relatively trivial. And of course, this is a starter, right? And so if you really want to play around with this yourself, I suggest you go here and just grab the next or the next one. The next one is actually slightly more code, but less opaque. You see the queries themselves a little bit more. Nux is just super convenient. And so if you go to this third link here, you can actually clone the Hygraph project for this and just try it yourself. See how it feels. Try different, different transformations, things like that. And so what we could do now, because we still have like 8 minutes, maybe we can do a different transformation for this hero. Let's have a look at what we have. Right, so how about this, I think this is pretty cool. So let's add a border that is a color of azure. Ooh, fancy. Okay, so just let's grab this. Let's say what that could look like in our query for the asset. So we have the hero already. We have an image. It resizes. But how about we add a border? Right, so we're the border. Let's make it thicker. 5. Color gray 15. I honestly don't know what that is. I'm just gonna let's have a look. Oh, that's not the right one. This one. Okay, so that didn't work, but it's possible that the GraphQL didn't update. Let's see. There we go. Um, I don't exactly know where the color gray 15 comes from. Maybe, Fabian, if you are in the chat, you might have a bit more information on that. What I could also do is just have a look in our playground to see if we have more colors available to us here. So okay, so no, this doesn't actually give me all that fun stuff. Ah, so there are CSS color names and we have a list in the docs. Oh, that's just me being a developer not finding things in the docs. I would be lying if I would find everything always in the docs. Okay, so we can use hex values. Okay, we just go with red then. And we don't need this background. Okay, let's see. So we might have to, yeah, so, oh, it's not liking that. I think it was my hex value. Let's see. No, it's not liking this. Nope. Fabian, help me out. Okay, border hex values. I'm not able to click that. Okay. Okay, so we're not so now let's just go here. So what is it? Ah, here we go. Oh, it's like this. Okay. Okay, of course. So Jonas, if I don't include this, it doesn't work. Look, if it's just like that, it will just break. If it's like this though, I think now it will work. Oh, this F looks different than the rest. That's very interesting. Let's go aqua. Let's see what this does. It's not having fun. Let's see. Come on. This is why you don't try unscripted things on a stream. Okay, so it's really not happy with this. Oh, maybe it needs a background rather than a color. So it needs one. Ah, I think that's it. So it also needs this. Let's just grab this one then. No, something else. This one. Let's have a look what this does. Oh, it needs to rebuild. Ah, it seems to be happy. Oh, there we go. Oh, it's hard to see on the stream, but it really is there. Yeah, it's really hard to see, but there we go. Yeah, so oh, here we go. Let's see what Jonas has to say. So currently all arguments are required. We will look into adding. Yeah, so this is always complicated, right? Because when you do transformations on images, order has a big impact. And so sometimes you just need all the things to always be there. So anyways, and we went off the script for a little bit, but we have 3 minutes to spare, and I literally built a whole starter with only a little bit of copy pasting and a lot of talking. This is actually how fast this is, right? If you understand headless a little bit, you understand your meta framework. Querying Hygraph is literally child's play. And so Mario has something. Let's say. Yeah, so I was literally struggling with colors the most, and the rest I just built while talking. It is how it is, isn't it? Thank you all for watching. I really appreciate everybody that's still here after seeing me code for like an hour. This is super awesome. Thank you, everybody. So tomorrow there is actually another panel. So this one on the screen here. So this is about peak performance, where we have Luca, Risha, Mirko, and Jonas. And I will be emceeing, so I'll be asking questions. And this is a panel where we talk about all the choices that we made. Why did we choose Remix for the studio build? What are all the considerations in caching? What are all the new things that we put in for performance, lazy loading, streaming of data? Like how far we pushed Remix until it didn't want to work anymore and we actually fixed things. And so that's going to be like a super, super interesting stream. If you're a developer and you have very annoying questions on every detail, our guys will show you. And these guys know. Like we've had a few practice sessions where like, holy moly, this went deep. But that's the real point of this session. We want you to ask us the things. We're open about what we built, why we did it, and how it works for the future. So my time is up. Dear Angie, who is backstage, what else do I need to say? Yes, I remembered myself. Here, we have a community. So if you join us on Slack, and I know if a lot of you in the chat are already there, ask me any question. Like if you're trying to do this with Next.js and you only saw me struggle in Nuxt, ask me how you want it, how it works, all those things. If you have feedback, you can actually go to a specific channel that we have for feedback about our studio. But if you have any questions like around the asset management, go in there, ask around. So is there any other questions? No. And so, well, you can go to the documentation and let's see. So these are so there's one important thing. We have the studio documentation that talks about all these beta features. And then we also have the normal docs for classic. And so feel free to browse both. Do whatever you want to do there. Yeah, that's it. Thank you everybody for watching, and we will see you tomorrow for the next panel. Cheers.